Hi, my name's Audrey, and today I'm going to show you how you can make your very own Ghost Candy Tote. This is perfect for Halloween and perfect for trick-or-treating. I mean, look at how much candy can fit in this thing. This project was inspired by, the old school ghost costumes, the kind where you might have been a little lazy and found a sheet in the back of the linen closet, a few holes cut in it, and you're ready to go. Well, this is also maybe just a little more difficult of a project, but you can definitely get it done in an afternoon. With this whole ghost, you have so many options. You can make it look like a traditional ghost, like white, or honestly, use some old sheets. I think fun patterns will make this look really, really cute. So let's get to sewing.
Okay, let's talk about fabric for this project. I today am just going to be using quilting cotton from my local quilting store. For the lining, I am going to use this fabric that is from Rifle Paper Co. I chose this one because it is so cute, and look right here, it already has a little sheet ghost costume, so that will be really fun. For the ghost body on the exterior, I just picked out this cream and white batik. I think this will add a nice texture to the bag, but again, this is such a fun opportunity for you to use any kind of fabrics, such as maybe a vintage sheet that you have lying around. I get these all the time from estate sales for like $1, so I think this could be really fun. And then lastly, I have this black fabric here that I'm going to use for both the face, so my eyes and the mouth, and then also the bottom of the ghost. By using this black at the bottom rather than the white, this will really allow for it to look like it's a sheet that's kind of just coming over. Okay, let's talk about the materials you're going to need outside of the fabric. Number one, you're definitely going to need a foam stabilizer. I personally use this package that's by Annie's, Soft and Stable. This is like a really large one, and that's because I just love doing all kinds of projects with this, but one of their smaller packages should do. Secondly, some sort of quilt basting spray will make this a whole heck of a lot easier. You'll use this to spray your ghost body onto that foam, and that will really lock it in and will cause it to have less wrinkles. It's not strictly necessary, to be honest. You could use a bunch of pins, and you could also do a additional basting stitches around it, but I will definitely recommend you get something like this. Lastly, some sort of double-sided fusible webbing really makes this project a whole lot easier as well. You don't need very much of this. This is to just put your ghost face onto the body. I personally use this 805 Wonder Under. There's a couple of different brands that do this. If you don't have any of this laying around, you can also use something like this, the handy dandy Elmer's glue stick. Personally, I have better success with this Wonder Under, but if this is what you have lying around, you can use this as well. Okay, so first steps first, let's go ahead and print out our pattern. So you can see here, I have printed this out at 100% scale or actual size. Just to double check, always take your ruler, and you can see that I created a 1-inch test square. So you can see this fits perfect. So this has printed perfectly. So we'll go ahead and cut this out. When it comes to the bottom, you can see here we have the side A and side B right here. So you need to cut around the solid line here and the solid line here, and then we are going to put them together where they align. Those two notches will align, and these lines will also align. So let's cut these out. Okay, here you can see I have my two sides, so let's take our handy dandy glue stick here. This is kind of old, it's turning pink, and I will just do a line of glue right there. Try not to get your table while you're at it, and then we just line it on up like this, and now you've got a circle. Okay, now we're going to take out our foam. You'll see from it being folded, there's often, creases in it like this and this. Have no fear. A little bit of a spray of water and an iron will get those out. So don't worry too much about that. But let's grab our side, and what I do is that since this is a flat line and this is a flat line, I'm gonna just line it up here like that. I'm gonna take my pen. You can use any kind of pen, to be honest. I just find that these little ballpoint pens are the easiest and can get the tightest line. So we'll trace it here all the way around. And then once we do that, you can actually just take this and trace it pretty close. That way you are wasting the least amount possible of this foam. Once you have all of your pieces here, you can go ahead and start cutting them out, and they'll look something like this. Now that we have cut out all of our pieces on the foam stabilizer, I am going to take my pattern piece again, and now we are going to cut out the fabric for the outside of the ghost body. I'm just using this fabric here. It's non-directional, so that makes it a little bit easier. I'm going to double it up and trace around. And because it's non-directional, I can do exactly what I did with the foam stabilizer, which is rotate, rotate. So let me go ahead and do that. Here they are all traced out, so let's cut these now. Now that we have all 6 of our ghost body sides cut out, I'm going to set this aside and let's cut the bottom of the ghost. Again, you can do the same white color if you would like. I think it will look better with black. So we're going to get our piece here and cut it out. We are going to hold on to this. We are not going to cut out the face pieces yet. We'll come back to it. Now moving on to the lining. So because this is directional, you can't go like this and this. So we will have to line them up like so. I'm also going to use my little piece of tailor's chalk instead of the pen to trace this out. All traced out, let's cut. Now that we have most of our pieces cut, including our flexible foam, so the side, the bottom, the handle, then we have our lining, so the bottom, the sides, and then I also use the lining fabric for the handle. And then for the outside, we have our sides with the white. Our bottom is in black. Now it will be time to make the bias binding. So I think for this particular one, I am going to use the same fabric as the lining. I went back and forth just because this is kind of a bigger print. So you can kind of imagine what it might look like, something like this. But I think that that will be okay. So let's go do that now. Now let's make our bias binding. So if you've never made bias binding, I'll show you exactly how we're going to do this. If you notice, fabric has some stretch this way, the warp and weft, but it has more stretch this way. So when we are doing the binding that is around a circle, we want as much stretch as possible. So we do want this cut on the bias. That just means diagonal. So we have our 11-inch square here, and that's what we're going to start with. Then go ahead and get a ruler, and we are going to cut diagonally, corner to corner. Now that I have my 2 triangles, what I am going to do is I am going to take them, so we have one straight edge here and one straight edge here. And now I'm going to pin this way. We are assuming a 1/4 inch seam allowance right here. So that means we want about 1/4 of an inch hanging off on this side and this side. As such, this is going to help our parallelogram be just perfect. I have it all pinned with just about 1/4 of an inch overlap on each side. So I'm going to go to the machine and sew from here to here. Now that we have our edge sewn, it makes a parallelogram. So now I'm going to go to my iron and I'm going to press this seam open. And here is our parallelogram. Now we are just going to flip this over like so. We're going to take one of our rulers, one of our long ones like this, and our chalk. And we are going to mark at every 2.5 inches. So here I am lining it up at the bottom. 2.5 inches. Now I'm going to take my chalk here and mark. Can you see? Now we are going to do that again. Again, 2.5 inches. So we should have 3 here. You can go ahead and measure this last one if you want. It's just really here is to show if you cut it correctly and it's all the same size. But this is just our 2 lines that we want. Okay, so the next step here is where it gets a slight bit more complicated, but I believe in you. So basically we are going to want to make a tube. So you see this tube here? We'll eventually sew these together, but we want to offset it just a little bit. So you can see where this line originally would line up here. We want to offset it by the next line. So it should go like that. We will want to pin these together. And of course, we want this line to intersect with this line at about 1/4 inch. So usually I just kind of eyeball this a little bit. I'll put a pin in, say that's probably about 1/4 inch. Oops. And then where is 1/4 inch on this side? It's about right there. So that is our first pin. Just like that. Now we can go ahead and pin the rest of that side. Like such. Now let's take this to the machine and sew, about right here to where it ends at 1/4 inch seam allowance. And now this is pretty much like magic. I have sewn this here and our lines line up perfectly. So now what we are going to do is we're going to grab our scissors and we are going to cut all the way around this chalk line. So it's a tube now, but this is going to make one big long strip. And ta-da, here we go. So now I will take this to the iron and the seam right here that I have not pressed yet, I'm going to go ahead and do that in both locations. Here it is all made. So for our particular application, we are going to do a single fold version. So that does mean that it needs to be folded in half and ironed. So I'm going to go do that now. And here it is folded and pressed. I will say, unless you're really, really good at this, you might get a spot like this at the seam. That's okay. Don't worry about it too much. Just try and match the edges together elsewhere. This will be hidden when we are sewing it all together. So now that we have this, we're going to put this aside. Now that all of our pieces are completely prepped, let's start building our ghost. So I'm going to take my bottom piece, fabric piece, and my ghost side pieces along with the foam stabilizer. And then I'm going to take this quilting basting spray and I am going to spray them together. I do recommend, if you're using this, to maybe get a tarp or a box or, lay some paper down, because this does have quite a bit of overspray and it can stay pretty sticky. Now, to make sure that it's just really secure and that it doesn't bunch up while we're sewing, I'm going to take these to my machine and do a basting stitch around the edge, probably at a stitch length of a 6 on my machine. And here these pieces are all basted. Let's start putting this ghost together. So I have 2 pieces here. I'm going to do right sides together, and then I tend to usually do a pin just at the top, like so, and then another pin here at the bottom, just to make sure that I am continuing to stay aligned. And I am going to sew all the way down this side at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Here are two pieces sewn together, and this is kind of what it looks like. So now what we are going to do is we're going to focus on the face. But before we get to the face, what we're going to do is press the seam open. So I did that here, and you can see it's not fully flush. So this is just enough so that it kind of keeps the seam pushed to one side. So we're going to go back to the machine, and we're going to sew a line right here and a line right here, and that's going to hold those seams down. While you do this, though, I do recommend holding it taut while you do this, just so that your seam ends up looking the best possible. So holding this flat like this, here I am just going to sew down, making sure that, see how it comes up like this? I want to make sure that that's flat and that the seam is on the right side. So this is what I mean when holding it a little bit taut. Always do your back stitch. And you can see, maybe kind of sort of, there you go. You can see your line all the way down. So now we're just going to do this on the other side too. With our two first panels, we are actually going to make the face now. So I'm going to go ahead and set this aside. And then I have my face pieces here roughly cut out just to verify that this will fit within my double-sided paperback fusible webbing. This is an old piece, so it's kind of coming apart. I also have my fabric that I'm going to use here. So what I will do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to iron it onto the fabric and then cut that square out. Here it is all ironed onto my fabric, and then I have traced my pieces here. This will be reversed, so just keep that in mind if you do your own face, that anything you do here will be reversed. Now that these are cut out, let's go ahead and take our two face panels, and we are going to align where we want these to be and then pin them into place. Once I'm generally happy at the placement of the face pieces, I am going to take these over to the iron and I'm going to press one at a time. Of course, you have to unpin them and peel back the paper, but just follow the instructions on the fusible webbing. Here it is all ironed on. This is roughly 1.75 inches from the top, and this is roughly 3 inches. So now what we will do, we'll take this to the machine and we're going to zigzag stitch all around. If you do choose to do your own face, just keep in mind that more complex shapes are more difficult to do on the machine, but you can always do this by hand. So here we are at the machine. I have changed out my thread to be black so that it matches the eyes. I have also changed my stitch to be a zigzag. I have a 2 for both the length and the width. So we're gonna go ahead and start. We're gonna put our presser foot down. Because of the angles here, you might have to lift and adjust the presser foot, but there's no issue with that. Just go slow and it will look good. Another tip would be make sure that your little center line is center with where the fabrics match. And I tend to overlap just a little bit at the end. Here you go. This is what it looks like. Now that we have our two face panels all done, we can start taking our additional panels and one at a time, pinning these and sewing. Again, we are doing a 3/8 seam allowance. on all of these panels. Just like this. So let's go to the machine and we'll sew them all together until we have 6 of them all lined up. And this is what it should look like with all of them sewed together. You'll notice we have not done our stitching like this yet. So we're going to take this to the iron, lightly press our seams open, and then we're going to repeat this on each one of these seams. Now with all of our top stitching done everywhere, we are going to close our ghost and make our final structure here. So same thing, we're going to get our pins, pin at the top and pin at the bottom, and sew that 3/8 inch seam allowance. And then I'll come back and bring the camera and I'll show you how to do the top stitch again on these last 2. Okay, let's do the final top stitch here. I already did one side, so I'll show you how to do the other. I like to take this piece off. It makes it just a whole lot easier to manipulate. And this is going to, actually I'm going to flip it this way. It does take some physical manipulation of your piece. So just keep that in mind. This could be a little tricky, but totally doable. So we're going to start here at the bottom, back stitch always, and we're just kind of pulling this out, going slow and pushing. Don't think you can really see, maybe here at the bottom, I'm just pushing this under. Continuing to push under. And there you go. Pull it back out. And it is fully done. It's really starting to come together now. Here it is all together, looking like a tube. So next steps is that we are going to pin this onto this, but we need this to be inside out first. So you're going to grab your bottom here, you're going to grab your pins, and you're just going to start pinning all around. A tip for pinning to make sure that this is all aligned correctly and that you don't have any extra space here would be, I marked, 4 places here quarterly, and I'm going to just take this and going to stuff it in like so, and I'm just going to give a pin right here, and then I'm going to go directly across, which will be the opposite seam. Go ahead and pin again over here. And then this will be like in the middle, so you can see, of this panel. So you can either measure that or you can kind of eyeball it. I think eyeballing should work just fine. And then same thing over here. Now that you have these all in place, you should be able to pin all the way around. Another tip is to kind of like pinch it so that you get everything lined up well. And here you go. Looks like this all the way around. So now let's go to the machine and sew a 3/8 seam allowance all the way around. So back to the machine we go. Because this is round, there is going to be some amount of ease. That means you're going to have to kind of pull the sides so that they sit flush. But start anywhere you want. Make sure that you're all aligned. If you pin well, the more pins you have, the less little pulling around that you have to do. Always back stitch. And here we go. Although you can't see it, I am doing a lot of pulling here. That's just to make it lie flat. And there we go. Here we are, bottom all sewn together, so let's flip it inside out. Let's see what we're looking like. Looking pretty good. Okay, look at that. Now we're going to take our lining pieces and we're going to sew right sides together, all 6 pieces of the sides at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. I have my side lining pieces all sewn together, so I'm just going to go to the iron and I'm going to press them all to one side. It doesn't really matter for this. Now that we have this all pressed, you can see on the outside, we will do the exact same thing with this. Makes sense to measure quarters and then pin. Okay, you'll notice in some places, like right here, how it gaps a little bit. That's okay. Oops. As we go to the machine, we will just have to pull a little bit to get that ease just correct. Take it to the machine and do a 3/8 seam allowance all the way around. And here the lining is fully constructed, the bottom. So we have our ghost and we have our lining, so it is time to go ahead and stuff this in here. We want wrong sides together, and then I'm just going to go ahead and start pinning at each of the seams here. Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to baste it so you can have a larger stitch size if you would like. And we're going to do that 1/4 inch away from the top. So this is different. Everything else has been 3/8. This is going to be 1/4. Here is the lining all sewn in. Looking pretty cute. So let's set that aside and let's move on to the handle. So I have my handle fabric and then I also have my foam stabilizer all cut out. So what I'm going to go do now is I'm going to fold this in half. You can use pins, you don't have to, and we're going to sew a 3/8 seam all the way down the long edge. So as a reminder, we just did a 1/4 on the top of the ghost with the lining. We're back to 3/8. Now that we have our tube all done, we're going to flip this inside out and then we're going to press. Now that this is all pressed and looking good, we're going to take our foam here and we are going to fish it through. The easiest way that I think it is to do this is I just have this random piece of ribbon and I put a safety pin on one end and then here I'm just going to do a safety pin on the other side here and then fish this through. Okay, so you can see that it's through, so now you just need to make sure that you have this all lined up and feel the seam. Make sure that that is all on one side. Here it is ironed, so you can see that I made sure that our seam right here is just on one side. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this over to my sewing machine and I am going to top stitch on each side. I'm going to do this roughly about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. Now that I have my top stitch on both sides, I'm going to actually just trim this. The reason why I have you cut the flexible foam just a little bit longer is so that it is easier to work with. So there we go. Throw those away. Now we are going to take our ghost back and we are going to grab our handle, making sure that whatever side we want to be the bottom of the handle is facing down. So now we are going to pin it in place. We're going to put it here and let's take one side. We want it to be in the middle of this panel here. So you have your face, not your face panels, but right here. So then we are going to go ahead and pin into place here. Then we are going to take this and do the same thing on the opposite side. Like such. Now we're going to take this back to the machine and we are going to sew back and forth maybe a couple of times here at 1/4 inch away from the edge so that we really secure this handle on there. Now that we have our handles all sewn in, I did back and forth a couple of times. It's time to grab our bias binding. We are going to put our bias binding on. This is really the last step and then we will be done here. So what I'm going to do is I want where the bias binding attaches to each other eventually to be roughly on the back side of my ghost here. So this is directly behind my face. So I'm going to take several inches and we're just going to leave that off as a tail. Now the rest of the binding, we are going to go ahead and pin. We're going to pin all the way around until we get, roughly about right here. Okay, so now we have a pretty long tail. You can cut this if you want. It probably will make it just a little bit easier, so I'm going to cut it right there. So we have lots of space. So now we need to connect these two pieces. If you've never done this before, then my recommendation would probably even be to start sewing all the way at the edge of each panel. But let's go to the machine and now we are going to sew all the way around the edge. This will be 3/8 of an inch down. Now that I have this all sewn on, don't worry if it kind of, feels like it's sitting a little odd. It is because we have an angle that's getting wider circumference as it goes down. So don't worry about that too much. We are going to take our remaining pieces. You can kind of do just like a quick little pin here. And right on the other side of that seam. Pin it again. So what we're doing here now is we want to connect the two. So we are going to do this diagonally. Sorry. I'm going to take this piece, and you see kind of where they come together like that. I'm going to press exactly right there. So might be helpful too if you took another pin and pinned it in place. Just like this, and now we're going to go to the iron and we're going to press this. Now that we have these lined up, we're going to take a couple more pins here, like that. And then another pin right here. Now we are going to sew this way. So the way that I remember, I saw this, I think, online a couple of years ago. We always want to sew on the waistline, not through the crotch. So if these were pants, sew through the waistline. Here you can see I have done a stitch line all the way across, and double check before you cut anything that this looks correct. It's like, can I get this all organized? So there you go. Look at that. Fits perfect. Now what we'll do is trim this. So I can go ahead and trim here. This is so nerve-wracking to me always for some reason. Now I'm going to go press this open, and then we will sew this on. Here it is all pressed, so let's go sew. All right, so this is fully sewn on. As you can see, I did a couple of lines up here. This is just to kind of make this less bulky. But now what we're gonna do is we're gonna just trim a little bit of the excess, like, I don't know, maybe about 1/8 of an inch from the top, just to kind of clean this up a little bit more. So here it is all trimmed, and now what we want to do is we want to fold this over. Can you see? Fold it over like this all the way around. And actually the first step here that would make it the easiest is if we go ahead and iron this up. So this is what it looks like when it's all pressed up. And next what we want to do is that we want to press this back down. So what is important here is our binding goes down further in the back than it will right here. So go ahead, back to the iron, press this, and then we are going to pin this down as well. Here it is with all of our pins. Now I'm going to go and do a stitch in the ditch. So that means I'm taking it to the machine and I'm going to stitch right here, still on the white, but as close possible to this purple as possible. Here we go. I have it all sewed down. So I would say really do your best to make sure that you have caught the back side of the bias binding everywhere. You'll notice that mine's not perfect. Like I didn't quite catch this right here. I think this one will be just fine because it's just a small little step down. But if it's anything too big, just go back around and make sure that it's tacked down. But look how good it looks. You can not really see the stitching unless you're like looking really close. Now we are on our very last step. So we want our handle to come up. So what I'm going to do is, and you can change your thread color if you want it to match the bias binding. I'm not going to do that. I'll just use white, but we're going to do a stitch right here, making sure that this stays up on both sides. And here you go.
And with that, you are all done with your ghost tote. It is ready to be used, it's ready to be loved, and most importantly, it is ready to be filled with a lot of Halloween candy. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments. I'm happy to help troubleshoot. Also, if you're interested, I have an additional tutorial on my channel for this jack-o'-lantern candy tote. They are the cutest pair together. I love them both, and there are so many customization options for this one as well. If you do end up making one of these, please let me see it. I love to see all the creative renditions that you all have. You can also put them in the comments here, put them on my Etsy, or you can tag me on TikTok. So happy sewing and happy Halloween.